Hello. Okay. Challengers. The latest from a Luca Guadagnino. I think that's how you pronounce his surname. Apologies if it's incorrect. But shock. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise.
This is actually the first movie for me to watch directed by Luca Guadagnino. I've always wanted to check out Call Me By Your Name and Bones and all, but I've just never got around to it. So this is my first movie experience. This is my first sort of experience watching a movie directed by Luca Guadagnino. So the film follows a professional tennis champion, Art Donaldson, who plots a comeback with the help of his wife, Tashi, a former tennis prodigy who retired after an injury, as he goes up against another player, Patrick Zweig, who also happens to be his former best friend and wife's former lover. So what we've got here with Challengers is a love story. It's a romance. We've got a love triangle that's told through the lens of tennis. It's quite a basic premise, one that we've seen before. But what makes this experience different? Like, there's so many aspects to this movie that makes this different that I'll go on to, that I'll go into in my review. But sort of one of the main ones is how these characters are written, and sort of how the complex nature of these characters and their backgrounds and where it is they come from and what their motivations and passions all are. And that's what made this experience, as well as many other elements to this movie and how it's crafted. It's sort of these characters and sort of where they come from and what it is that drives them and motivates them is what sort of made this such a compelling and immersive experience for me. You've got two childhood friends that are pitted against each other by Zendaya's character, who's very calculating, but she's also very passionate and motivated by the game of tennis and comes from a very different background from these two lads who are played by Josh O'Connor and Mike Faist. They all give absolutely fantastic performances. They're all great here within their roles. But for me, the standout was Zendaya. Zendaya in this movie as Tashi is just simply great. Like, she says so much about her character just through her performance and in how she brings this character to life through these very kind of nuanced expressions in how she would look at these characters as she's pitting them against each other. And she has this presence whenever she's on the screen. This kind of very powerful presence. And I just found her character and just how she brought this character to life to be very compelling, very interesting. And there's moments like the bedroom scene where she's sitting there and you can see her plotting, you can see her judging and sort of working out what it is she's potentially going to do. It's sort of, she says so much without saying anything. And I just really love that about Zendaya's performance here and in how the character was written. In many ways, this character is quite a cruel character. But I also understood her motivations and her passion and what it was she wanted to achieve. And a lot of this sort of added to the sort of the toxic nature of this relationship, which kind of really challenged me as a viewer. Like, all three of these characters and sort of none of these characters are perfect characters. They're all flawed and they all sort of add to that toxic nature when it comes to this relationship. And as a result of this, it just sort of really challenged me as a viewer. And I found myself, almost like the tennis ball itself, really, sort of kind of flipping back and forth from different characters in regards to who it was that I was rooting for and sort of, how I felt towards each character throughout this entire experience would just shift. Just like a tennis ball would, going back and forth. That's how I kind of felt. And I really like that about this experience because it's what allowed me to be sort of really kind of immersed and sucked into this story and almost as if I'm in this relationship myself with these characters. And so yeah, this is what I feel like the movie did really well. It challenges your feelings, it challenges your emotions in how you feel towards these characters as the experience evolves, and you do find yourself sort of constantly kind of, well, I did anyway, sort of changing who it was that I was sort of rooting for, really. Because every one of these characters are flawed and just how it plays out right into that final act was beautifully done. And it's also the way in which this movie is crafted. Just from the way in which the narrative plays out, for example. It's non-linear narrative. So you start the movie sort of like in present day, and then it sort of goes back 12 weeks earlier, then it sort of fast forwards sort of at midnight, so it's all out of sequence. But it's as a result of telling the story in this way that kind of really sort of builds this momentum sort of to that final act, that very sort of intense, exciting final act. And it's due to how this narrative is constructed and sort of how this story is told, along with the way in which Luca Guadagnino sort of shoots this movie. Like, he uses so many different techniques, especially during the final act, during this tennis game and this tennis match. And you've got like the camera from sort of looking at it from below. In one moment you are the tennis ball going back and forth, and then you're seeing it from the perspective of the tennis players. And just the way in which he does this, you've got so many different techniques, but it's very seamless, and it also just sort of really immerses you so much more into what it is that's going on in the moment. You feel the tension, you feel the passion, and it's almost like Luca, the director, is putting you there, right there next to these characters. That is how I felt, and he does a fantastic job at just sort of wrapping you up into the moment. I just really dug how this movie was crafted and how the story was told, especially the narrative, because again, going back to the very kind of basic premise, this is a very sort of basic premise, but it's how this story is told and constructed that sort of really kind of makes it something very different and sort of feels very fresh. I absolutely adored the soundtrack to this movie by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. It's pulsating, it's thumping, it's this 90s sort of synth electronic sound that sort of, in many ways I felt, kind of helped, like the visuals, sort of really sort of helps tell this story about these characters from a sort of psychological, mental perspective. It's sort of almost like the score is telling a story, or sort of aiding the story itself. It's sort of giving you that kind of different sort of perspective of what it is that's going on with these characters from sort of a psychological perspective, and sort of kind of really sort of highlighting the games that these characters are playing against each other. And it's just like I said, going back to the visuals and how this movie is crafted, there is so much said just from the performances and how people hold themselves, and sort of from those nuanced expressions to the soundtrack and through the visuals that sort of really sort of tell this story without the story being told to us by people. It's allowing us to sort of really kind of dissect and to decipher what it is that we are seeing and try to work out ourselves. And so it sort of makes it more of an experience for us as viewers, what cinema really should do. My fondness for this movie has grown much more intense since after watching it yesterday. I've sort of kind of reflected on it quite a bit, and the more I've reflected on it, the more I really want to go back and watch this again. And I feel like the more that I'm probably going to get out of it as well, just because of how so much is told through the visuals. Is it a perfect movie? No. I think it is a little bit messy with its narrative, even though sort of the structure of the narrative works for the most part. It can be a little bit messy, and perhaps I was hoping for a much more deeper dive into these characters. Mainly Zendaya's character, Tashi. I was sort of hoping more of a sort of psychological deep dive into this character, and perhaps I was expecting something perhaps a little bit more deeper and complex, even though this, we have got these complex characters already. Like, what I'm trying to say is, I felt like I never really truly knew these characters, especially Zendaya. You get sort of what it is she's doing. She is very calculating. You get her passions and her motivations and all of that. But due to how her character shifts during the second and the third act, I found myself sort of really kind of wanting to know more about this character, because I found myself becoming a lot more disconnected with the character as the story progressed. And I kind of felt like that towards all three of the characters, really, that I never really sort of kind of truly knew them. But I really liked this experience. I really liked this movie. It evokes all the right emotions. It made me laugh. It was fun. It was exciting. It was tense. It made me angry. It made me frustrated. It's a very well done love story within the world of these people who all love tennis, but all for different reasons. And yeah, like this movie for me ultimately is based on just passion. And it's, you know, it's a very horny experience, and it sort of says so much through these kind of very raw and sort of human sort of feelings and expressions, and sort of just what it is to be human, and sort of love something so much that what one might do to achieve that. And so as a result, sort of gives this movie this kind of very human story, and I think one that everyone can relate to. But also, like, at the end of the day, like I said, going back to how you feel towards these characters, there isn't really one character that you can get 100% fully behind, because it really sort of lays bare these characters' flaws. And as a result of that, I don't think ultimately there was one character that I could really say that I really ended up 100% rooting for. But that's what makes this more of a sort of a complex experience in a way, that really sort of challenges you and does something very different with what is a very basic premise. So yeah, enough rambling on from me. I really enjoyed this movie. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. And yes, perhaps there was, you know, it's not perfect, but I feel like it takes a very basic premise and does something very different and complex and deeper when it comes to what it is that it's telling, the story that it's telling between these three characters and this love story. It does kind of flirt with being something more on a sort of a kind of a meaner psychological level, I felt, and that's perhaps something that I was kind of wanting a bit more, especially in the opening scene. Like, you've got this fantastic opening scene where you're introduced to these characters playing tennis, and you've got Zendaya right in the middle, and you've got this thumping, pulsating score, and it almost in that moment sort of leads you to believe you're watching perhaps a certain type of movie that's going to be a much deeper dive into what this character is doing. But it doesn't quite dive that deep as to what my expectations were, but I was still satisfied with what it was that we got. So yeah, I've kind of rambled on again a little bit there, but yeah, they are my thoughts on Challengers, and I will be giving Challengers an 8 out of 10. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Challengers, but what did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next movie review will be for The Fall Guy. I'm really looking forward to checking that out. It's quite a busy weekend actually when it comes to movie releases, because you've also got Tarot, and you've also got Love Lies Bleeding, which I'm really looking forward to. I just love the look of that movie through the trailer. It looks quite dark, gritty, seedy. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to checking Love Lies Bleeding out. So there's quite a few movies coming out this weekend, and I'm going to try and get around to all of them. But the ones at the top it's definitely The Fall Guy and Love Lies Bleeding, and they will be my next movie reviews. I do also plan on doing a trailer review for Mufasa. I have watched it, and I have got, I'm looking forward to bringing you my thoughts on that trailer. But yeah, anyway, thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'll be catching you guys soon.